Hey, welcome to another Ask Me Anything video cast where I, Chris Clemens, take your questions and do my best to give them answers. Today's question comes from one of my friends who's been kind of following my campaign for a while. It's a rather beefy question, it's rather meaty, so I kind of want to just read it verbatim. The subject of the question is raising children for a better future. The question is, we are seeing the loss of expectations for children, and with that, a loss in the growth and maturity they need to develop in order to succeed. What should be done to redevelop that mindset in parents and government, since parents are more and more relying on schools and programs to raise their kids? How do we counter the trend of failure to launch and laziness, lack of realistic planning skills, and self-actualization, where people are bogging down society and they aren't our kids under our own control? Is big government the only answer to widespread parental failure? So to address that question, and to start off, I will start with the very last part of that question, which is big government the answer to our problems today? I would say it's exactly the opposite. To be honest, big government is why we are in the situation we are today with education. And it stems from things like No Child Left Behind. It stems from the development or creation of the Federal Department of Education. And essentially, the standardization process and the testing that goes with it, that's attached to funding, has essentially pigeonholed teachers, administrators, into creating an environment that's not conducive to building the skills that's outlined in this particular question. You know, we talk about self-actualization, people actually being able to go out and do the things they want to do and learn and know how to acquire the skills they need for that. That just doesn't exist in a classroom today because we are focused on knowledge acquisition. We're trying to fill with these arbitrary standards as much information as we can in a given school year into your child's mind, essentially, so that should a question about that particular standard come up, they might have an answer for it. And that's how we've developed our schools over the last 20 plus years. We've been focused on memorization, rote memorization mostly, and we're doing very little with the utilization of that knowledge. Very, very few students go through their school career where they are able to actually go through and do a building project or do a gardening project or just simply research topics on their own with a teacher nearby to help guide them and show them how to do it. Instead, what we do is we take very dry topics that are very ethereal or esoteric, and we force them on our kids, and then we pretend like by giving them, a, B, or C option that we're giving them student choice. But you have to understand, children, especially in the middle school levels, want to play, and that's how they learn, especially boys. They're very physical, they can't sit still, and yet that's what we're asking them to do because we have to get through all of these standards. What we really need to do is try to inspire as many different school districts as possible to approach education from as many different ways as possible. Because every student is coming from a different background. Every student that you have has different interests, different desires, different goals. Not only are they coming from different backgrounds, but their particular culture might be completely different. Rosedale Middle School, the school that I teach in, is a completely different community than, say, Central Middle School on a different part of Kansas City. Same district, totally different cultures that live within them. Totally different demographics, totally different backgrounds, totally different skill sets as they come into the classroom. Yet what we're trying to do with standardized education is create a one-size-fits-all process. And every single ounce of data that we've collected and every study that we've done and every paper and book that's been written has said that students have different individual learning needs. And a standardized process is never going to be able to address all of those different needs. So what we want to focus on, if we're actually really looking at getting students to learn, how to be lifelong learners, how to handle responsibility once they're off on their own, how to utilize knowledge and actually be able to gain the skills they need in a constantly changing workforce. And the economy of today isn't the economy of the 1950s. You might have 3, 4, 5 different careers in your lifetime. You have to be adaptable. You have to be creative. You ask industry leaders, what do they want in learners? They want critical thinkers. They want people who know how to take knowledge and apply it. They want people who can take things on the fly and run with it. And that's not what our system is doing right now. We have to focus on giving students real learning opportunities where they're using that information, as well as giving them as much control over their own learning as possible. You don't learn responsibility by never having responsibility given to you. And as I've said before, if you look at a student's day-to-day existence in a public school, they have almost no choice over what's going on, and they have almost no responsibility given to them, because those two things, choice and responsibility, take time. They interrupt the knowledge acquisition process, essentially. There's disturbances that are created. And instead of dealing with those disturbances as they come and showing students how to appropriately use that responsibility, we just take it away. So then we have these kids who have an infantile level of responsibility or control, and we just simply put them out at 18 and say, go to college or go get a job. And that's simply just a recipe for disaster. And a lot of the issues that we're seeing today are a direct result from that. So how is it that you fix this problem? Well, you let teachers do what they know how to do. You let administrators develop school buildings that function within their communities instead of just simply having a standardized process across the board. We should have as many different approaches to education as possible, not just one. And that allows the education system to be very flexible, but it also allows innovation to occur in the classroom. Suddenly, if I'm no longer worried about getting through 1,000,001 standards in a given course year, maybe we spend more time on a subject where I open it up to students to learn about that subject however they please. Maybe we start giving kids more projects where they're building and using their knowledge instead of being so focused on, well, did you remember this equation? Okay, now can you do this equation? Okay, now can you do this equation? So getting government out of the way. That doesn't mean getting rid of public schools. It simply means getting government control over schools out of the way and leaving the control over curriculum and discipline and testing. All of that stuff needs to be as local as possible. If not the school district, it needs to be at the building level. So I hope that answers your question. It's a bit of a long answer, but this is one of those subjects that I could talk in depth for hours and hours and hours. So with that, I look forward to your next set of questions.